am Dove,
Hello, I'm Daniel,
and
and
we're here because we are starting a podcast.
it's called Post-Exertional Mayonnaise. Um, do you? I was going to ask, Dov, do you like mayonnaise?
I hate mayonnaise,
You hate
but
mayonnaise?
but but the one really great thing is that like because I tried to make mayonnaise art, I have now coined the term mayonnaise art.
Very good.
So I've decided that like if I ever have to make a resume again, I can put mayonnaise art on it. I'm a mayonnaise artist.
That's very good. Yeah, it's a niche form of art that you'd have to put some sort of lacquer on over the top of it to kind of keep it from kind of going all weird and sticky and drippy and stuff, wouldn't you? Well,
I mean,
mayonnaise
I composted my mayonnaise art.
mayonnaise kind of like goes all kind of see-through, doesn't it? If you leave it like out, it just goes all claggy. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you like mayonnaise?
I do love mayonnaise, and my daughter loves mayonnaise as well, and it's probably my fault that she uses lots of it. So yeah, I like mayonnaise. My wife can't stand it, so um yeah. But we just thought we'd use that name because it came to me late one night, and it sounds a bit like Malaise,
Yeah.
and it just was quite quirky, really. So for those that don't know, post exertional malaise is for people with ME, which both of us have, is that kind of experience after exertion, sometimes up to 24 hours, where we can have an onslaught of different types of ME symptoms, mostly the exhaustion. So that's kind of like why we called it that, really.
Yeah, two things. One,
Go on.
okay, I don't hate mayonnaise. I hate the idea of mayonnaise. Okay, I like as a food, the
The
idea of it,
concept.
the concept of mayonnaise, but I actually have enjoyed like eating French fries with mayonnaise, but I wouldn't eat it now. I wouldn't eat it now. Also, like I tend to describe post-exertional malaise, post-exertional mayonnaise as like being destroyed by exertion
Yeah.
because to me it's it's I know that a lot of people talk about it as getting an exacerbation of symptoms and a worsening of symptoms, but for me it's just like I just feel like I have been sort of this like I don't know, there's a sense of the body becomes something of a catastrophe. So for me, like the actual phrase post-exertional malaise doesn't even begin
No.
to hold what it feels like to kind of experience symptoms after exertion, but it is a term that a lot of it's not the only term people use. It's a term a lot of people use.
Yeah. Yeah. There's PENE or PESE. So there's various
Yeah.
different versions, but we quite like, well, I like mayonnaise anyway. So
Yes.
but I guess the reason for the podcast, because we've been sort of friends for a while now, haven't we? And we just chat every 2 or 3 weeks, often on Zoom. And I think you said, oh, we should make a podcast. Was it you? I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't feel like...
remember. I feel like we've been saying it back and forth to each other for a long time about different things because I think we tend to be really interested in exploring the way that ME affects our daily lives, but also the way that it shifts the way we think about the world and really influences our understanding of ourselves and the world. And we think a lot like in terms of philosophical, and we think about a lot of philosophical, but also sort of existential sort of the influences that ME has in our philosophies and existential understandings. And since we have, we tend to have very in-depth conversations, and I think that these conversations um, are, I think a lot of people with ME probably have had their worlds like deeply influenced in a lot of negative ways, but also probably in some ways that are interesting to in
Mm,
terms of like what it means to be a human in the world and what it means to be a sick human in a world that tries to deny that our bodies are all vulnerable and that we are vulnerable. So
mm.
I think I think because we tend to really dig into a lot of like rich and meaningful topics, it just seems like there's a lot to talk about and a lot to think about
Hmm.
when you have an illness like this. And it gets, sometimes the only thing you can do is just like think about stuff. So I think is as an illness, it's something that tends to encourage a lot of rumination.
Hmm. Definitely, and I think I think we felt maybe we could just share some of those conversations and also have guests on and things. One of the main focuses of the podcast is we don't want to be just about kind of like ME and chronic illness and focusing on those things, because we were thinking a lot about creativity, and you're an author, Dov, and I try and make music and blog and things. So um, that aspect is really important to my daily life in a way of giving me meaning and giving me focus. And I think that's the case for you. And we wanted to talk to people that are creative, but also living with ME and chronic illness, and kind of just get different perspectives on that, because creativity almost feels like a life source somehow, while suffering and while going through that sort of difficult periods and the post-exertional mayonnaise malaise, and those times, and how we manage creativity with or without those things impacting us. So that was kind of like the sort of thinking around creativity within it as well, and how we make meaning through the creativity living with chronic illness. And we want to be fun
Right.
as well,
Like
don't we?
I think there's a lot of people talking about their experience of illness. And it's not that we don't want to hear people's experience of having ME, we do, but we also wanted to broaden it out into questions of um, how people cope with daily life, how people um, make meaning in their lives when their lives have become, I think a lot of people feel like they have um, lost a, a lot of the things that sort of made up their identity. When you get ME, you kind of, often you lose your relationship with work, with often with community. Like there's a lot of ways you become isolated, and then you have to sort of recreate a sense of what it means to be a human in the world. So I think we really want to explore how people make sense of what it means to be a human in the world, how people make meaning when their lives have in some ways become so small, in the sense of you lose access to a lot of things and a lot of people. And so how do we cope? How do we find any kind of like meaning and joy and connection? What kind of projects, if we had the capacity to do projects or an interest, like what kind of project work and creative project work are we working on? And what does that look like when we have an illness that makes it
Mm.
really hard to um, do creative work? So yeah, and so yeah.
I think one big thing was we were thinking about as well as sort of building community amongst creative people within the ME community as well. And we are sort of building sort of socials in terms of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And one of the things that we want to do is really showcase people's work, whether that is music, whether it's writing, blogging, creative kind of arts and crafts, poetry. We'd love to read people's poems on the podcast and have a space for that. Yeah, so I think just all sorts. We want to sort of broaden people's perspectives and horizons, and encourage that sort of side of building community as well. So that was one thought.
Yeah, we'd love to create a community where we can share our work and our art and our experiences. And I have to say that like for me, I also would like to, we're very clear that this is not a place to get medical advice. This
Mm.
is not a place where we're like exploring the depths of illness experience in that sense. But I do think that kvetching is an important activity when you have an illness like this. So I would, I think Dan is I feel like Dan is the adult in the room in the sense that he wants to really focus on um the ways that we're being creative and the ways that we're engaging positively, not positively in a like toxic positivity way, but the ways that we're really trying to stay connected to our selves and
Hello.
our community and connect in really meaningful, beautiful ways. I also would like to spend some time kvetching. So this is a new project, and I think it's going to develop as we work on it. But I I think like there's also going to be some room for kvetching.
Yeah, and humor as well. We want to add some humor because I did just put on Twitter the other day what makes you laugh, just as a question, and we want to be able to make people laugh as well somehow. We're not great comedians, but I think there is space for just humor and actually finding humor despite the kind of things that we go through living with ME is essential because it's one of the things that keeps me going anyway. So yeah, we've got an email address, and if anybody wants to email in any questions, suggestions, anything you want to say, anything you want us to share, poetry, do email us. It's pempodcast23@gmail.com. PEMPODCAST23@gmail.com. And that's now an active email address that's open as well. So it would be great to hear from you, listeners. Anything else that you want to say,
Yeah,
John?
I think we're gonna have to come up uh with some kind of ground rules in terms of how we're going to
Hmm.
interact with each other, and we're really interested in people showing up to support and respect each other. So hopefully we won't have to delve too deep into that. Hopefully people will just take it upon themselves to if you want to be here, we're here to be supportive of each other. We're not here to give advice to each other. We're not here to tell people how they should be um, orienting themselves to illness in terms of attitudes or
Hmm.
yeah, we're really here to spend time with each other and explore our worlds as small as they are. They're still beautiful, and we want to stay connected, but yeah, it's really important that we um hold space for um, meaningful connection, and that involves like really respecting each other's identities. And yeah, I don't know, do you have a better way of saying that?
No, that makes sense. And I think just coming out of one of those things that you said was, I just made a note earlier, was about we want to be a podcast that's kind of grounded in reality rather than
Yeah,
recovery. So we're not a
yeah,
recovery narrative podcast whatsoever, in the sense that we're very much realists about how this illness impacts each one of us, and how we kind of live our lives adapting to that, rather than this is this is 5 stages to recovery from ME, because I think we're
right,
all very very clear that recovery is not an easy thing. It happens to some people. For many of us, we're in this for the long haul. So we want to support people that are in that position, really, that kind of we can do all sorts of things to try and aid that recovery, but ultimately we want to just walk with each other on the journey of life with ME.
yeah,
And if we get some great positive stories, that's fantastic. But I think we're certainly both realists within the context, and I think people might feel reassured that that's the case when coming into listening to a podcast, because it brings up so many emotions as well, doesn't it? So
Yeah. I personally like I have managed to, I think for me, acceptance of the fact of this illness is allows me to open up space to grieve what I've lost and enjoy what I can in life. And so I mean, I'll speak for myself. I am not here to talk about any kind of miracle cures or magical fixes to illness. I'm here to talk about just what it means to live with
mm,
illness.
mm, mm.
You know,
So we haven't set any great designs on how frequently we're going to have the podcast out. I don't know if you've got any ideas, Dob, but certainly we're going to try and make it regularly-ish, I think is our aim.
yeah, right. I love that. Right. Yes, regularly-ish. And we're also not clear, like we know that some conversations we want to just be talking like this. And we also want to interview other people and we want to it's not clear yet. Are we always both going to be interviewing other people, or how we're sort of divisions of labor and what kind of editing we're going to do? Like, if we wanted to sort of just be raw conversations, or if we want to do a lot of editing of conversations. And yeah, I think there's a lot that we're gonna learn and figure out as we go. We have a basic sense of what it is that the kinds of engagement we want to be doing, but I think it's going to develop and evolve, and we're just going to try to hold space to see like what works for us as two people with who are quite well. For me, I'm my capacities are limited. And I think I could say we both have limited capacities and big dreams.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're
definitely,
just gonna have to kind of see how it works out.
definitely. Well, thanks for listening, people. Do email us, find us on social media. We're going to try and get the word out. If you can share any of our social media stuff, that would be fantastic. And we look forward to speaking to you more soon. Thank you. Bye. Hi there, just me again. Before we went, I just thought it'd be useful to clarify a little bit about post-exertional malaise, because during the video I wasn't sure that I'd been clear enough about kind of the impact of it. So Action for ME state that simple physical or mental activities or combinations of activities can leave people with ME feeling utterly debilitated. This can also experience an increase in other they can also experience an increase in other symptoms. The impact of this may be felt straight away, but can typically take a day or two to kick in and is not significantly improved by resting. This is a key feature of the way ME affects people and is known as post-exertional malaise, sometimes called payback. So when I mentioned 24 hours, I think what I meant was that often it can take up to 24 hours or even to 48 hours for the impact of the activity to kick in, and then the impact of it afterwards can last sort of hours, days, weeks, months for some. So yeah, that's just a quick summary of post-exertional malaise. We're planning on having a separate episode, probably covering it in more detail, but I hope that's been helpful.